Hello, everyone. Welcome to Growing to Give's webcast series, where we sow the seeds of knowledge for a sustainable future. I'm Siobhan Shaw, your host for today's exciting session. Thank you for joining us. Before we delve into our topic, let me give you a quick overview of what Growing to Give stands for. Growing to Give is dedicated to cultivating a sustainable future through education, collaboration, and innovation. This year, we've raised funds for our Strengthening Community Gardens across America, Africa, and the Caribbean initiative. It's exciting news. And the really exciting news is that we've been selected as one of the top 48 applicants for the prestigious Food Planet Prize, highlighting our commitment to sustainability. Join us on this journey. Sorry, I had to just mute somebody. Join us on this journey of growth, learning, and green inspiration. Support our cause with your donation today. Now let's introduce our esteemed guest speaker for today, someone truly remarkable in the field of horticulture and education, Lisa Roberts, AKA Mimi. And she is an author, creator, radio co-host, entertainer, and a Texas businesswoman. She holds a BA in business from St. Edward's University, is a certified horticulturalist and child development specialist in Texas. Yes, she's got an accent, everybody. Lisa is also the owner of Mimi's Country Porch, LLC, a family how-to talk variety show podcast that educates on topics such as nutrition, exercise, gardening, and building character. Mimi and friends are currently growing their own vegetables for the show and are even utilizing Crop Circle Farms technology for greater yields. To learn more about Mimi's Country Porch, go to mimiscountryporch.com. And the link will also be included in the show notes. Now, please join me in welcoming the amazing Lisa Roberts. Lisa, it's good to see you.
It's great to see you. Wow, thank you very much. It's good to see you. I'm excited about this topic. I know a lot of people always ask me, well, I want to grow something, but I don't know how. And I think the most simplest way is to start with containers. You can use a box as long as it's lined. You can use tubs that you water your cattle with. You can use terracotta, which is my favorite. But there's all sorts of containers you can anything that will hold medium dirt, soil in it, you can use. Go ahead.
So the container gardening, you're saying, is a fantastic way for beginners to get started with gardening, especially if they have limited spaces. So
Yes.
let's explore the basics of the container gardening and its significance in promoting a sustainable practices at home. And I just want to set the stage. I just want to share a 2021 stat from the National Gardening Association here in the US. Researchers found that there was an increase of 18.3 million new gardeners as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody was growing at home. And I'm sure I had a lot to do with it because I was out doing videos to teach people how to grow their own food back in the day, at the beginning of the pandemic. I would do a lot of videos on my Facebook page. And so the results that came in from that study found that 2 out of 3 gardeners tried a new gardening activity, and 1 in 3 gardeners had difficulty knowing where to start. So thank you for joining us, Lisa. Let's kick things off by discussing the fundamentals of container gardening. And I'm going to just let you go. Can you start by sharing some tips for beginners who are just starting out?
Oh, sure. Once you find, depending on if you want to be decorative or if you just want to just try something out, go ahead and get a container. You can get the terracotta that are inexpensive. The best thing I can explain about container gardening is you have control. You have things that are close to you, that you're close to your water source. You don't have to be dragging things over into the garden area. You're close to where you can watch how your plants are growing, how if there's insects starting and what to do about the insects. it's I would just say control. You have control over your plants right away. Um, go ahead and go to your local garden center and ask them. If you want, you can go to the almanac, or you can go to almanac.org, I believe it is, and try to find your growing zone of when you would plant what and when. And you can start out with your vegetables. You will know how you're growing them. You'll know that there's not any GMO going on with your plants, and how healthy that they'll be. And it's so much fun when you first see those seeds start to sprout, or the fruit start as well. You'll be so excited. You'll be jumping around saying, I can grow something. And then you just go from there.
Can you grow in like shoes and wheelbarrows and
Yes, I love it.
actually just
Yes,
saw
you
that.
can
I
grow it.
saw a nonprofit and then they
You,
were doing
you
a
can
program and they were going to have people grow something in shoes this spring.
You could grow in a shoe if you line it and it has a hole. You drill a hole in the shoe to make sure that there's plenty of that the water can go out, and the plants aren't getting their feet wet. The roots, they don't like to stay constantly wet. So you'll lose a plant doing that. But yes, you can grow in a shoe. I like that. I'll have to try that.
I
That'd
know
be a good one.
you could get your work boots, old work boots out. You could you could make
Oh,
steps,
that's a good.
the shoes are
You can
walking through
start to
your
grow in
garden. It would
boots.
be fun.
Texans would like to grow in boots. That would be a good thing.
So cowboy boots.
Hmm.
Um, so you've got your container chosen or containers, so you
Yeah.
can have multiple containers. Um, how about soil? How do you, first of all, get the soil? Where do you go to find the soil? What do you need to do to prepare it?
You could make sure with your soil that it's not the garden soil, that it needs to be light. At the garden centers, they do have container soil that has lighter material in it. As a matter of fact, I gave y'all a recipe that they can get later on an article that will be posted. But you can have peat moss, perlite, and vermiculite in the soil, and it's lighter, and it will keep your plants moist longer, and it won't just compact like garden soil will, where the water just spreads everywhere. It will go to the plant. So be sure to get gardening soil. That's important. um and as your containers, make sure that they also have a hole at the bottom so the water can drain out. Like I say, you don't want to keep your plants wet. And it depending on your springs and summers, you want to make sure that you're watering enough, but not too much. You may have to water if it's a dry oh, let me back up here. You're going to want 6 to 8 hours of sun with most of your vegetables. Some of your rooted vegetables will take only 5 hours of sun. But if you're getting that much sun, you're going to be sure that it's going to need maybe water twice a day. So make sure that you're close to a water spigot somewhere, that you're a water source that you can use.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, with your containers, if they're on the ground, it probably doesn't matter, if the water drains out onto the ground. But if you're on a deck of an apartment building or on your deck at your home, correct? What do you
Correct.
want to put under there?
You're going most terracotta containers will have a bottom, but you're going to want a pan underneath whatever you choose, even if it's a shoe. You're going to want to choose something that holds the water in, because it will suck up from the bottom. You were talking the about the watering. They could either top water or bottom water, because if you have the pan at the bottom, you can water from there. Just make sure that it's connecting, that it will come up and water the roots. Make sure the roots get wet. If you're doing a drip, you have everybody has seen the hoses that have the drip. You can drip it slowly. But if you're going to water, make sure that you water it thoroughly, not halfway over here and that it splatters everywhere, that it's a thorough water. Or you can do a sub irrigation, and that's using a wicking system. And they can look up information about that, because that's pretty extensive. But just starting out, you're probably going to want to use a pan.
Okay. Now you've got the soil, you've got the container, you've got the soil, you've got your spots picked out. Now what?
Now you go to the garden center, or you can look online and see there's a lot of seed companies out there that have really good seeds, heirloom seeds. They, you get your seeds and check on the back of, I had a seed thing here and I didn't bring it in. On the back of the package, it will tell you how many seeds and if it goes a fourth of an inch or half an inch, and put your seeds in and how many are needed and how long it will stay in there. And some plants, depending on your zone, you'll need to sow your seeds before and get a little plant, a little sprout coming out before you plant those. So it just depends on you. I was, when first starting out, most people are more comfortable with going to a garden center and choosing the plants that are 6 inches, and also and go ahead and planting those at that time. And they probably will be disease free, and depending on where you buy them from, and you'll have better luck starting out that way with the 6 inch plant.
And they're not very expensive, correct?
No, no, they shouldn't be. They're, sometimes they're a couple of dollars if you buy a bigger one that's an 8 or 10 inch, but no, it's real cost effective, especially when you start getting a bounty from them.
Cool.
Not
I
costly at
just
all.
wanted to ask about how how do you know when you bring these little transplants home, how deep to plant them in your containers and which containers to choose for which plants, like say root plant, root crops or beans or peppers. How do you know how big a
It,
pot you need?
First, check to see how wide the plant is going to be. It will tell you an adult size, how big the plant's going to be, because you're going to need space, especially if you put on how deep to plant them. Most of the time, it's a fourth of an inch and a half of an inch if you're going to do the seeds. But if the plant, the same thing. You want to make sure that they're covered, not the plant, but that the root system is covered. And but not, I apologize, that's one of my dogs. But that it's still getting enough water. You want to make sure that it gets water and it's not covered up by the leaves of the plant.
Okay. And there is a trick for planting tomatoes. Do you know it? Because I do.
Go ahead. I think I know what you're going to say.
So, what you want to do is you want to bury the tomato stem as deep as you can so that just the top leaves are sticking out of the soil. And what this does is it allows the plant to make extra roots on the stem that's buried, so it gets stronger and it's able to intake more nutrient and water, and the plants get stronger because they're not starting out like
Like
tiny
blowing in the wind.
little pencils waving in the wind, right? They actually are coming up, and they come up and they can bush out, and depending if you have determinate or indeterminate, they're going to keep going, right? So
Oh yeah.
that's a little trick, I know.
I like that trick. Most of the time with tomatoes, that is different, and a couple of others that will, the vine plants will, that's good for. But for the most part, you want to make sure that you're not covering the plant, that it doesn't get wet, because the leaves don't like to stay wet. Diseases get on them, and that's when you're going to have trouble and start to lose a plant.
So what happens if there is a disease that you start to see, and how do you recognize it?
Well, you'll see your plant turn yellow, or you'll see spotted leaves. And that also could be um, insects that are on there. Um, I don't know if you want to discuss the insects, but about the diseases, you don't want to get powder mildew on there where the plant is going to turn yellow. You can really start to see that with the leaves, or if the plant starts to come into itself. Most healthy leaves are plump and green, and like you were saying earlier, look up and are like, here I'm alive. But a sick plant that has been overwatered or has a disease, most can be, if you check your water and you check that it's not bugs, if you pick off the ones that are already diseased, most can come back. You'll start to see new sprouts.
Is how you water a plant important?
Yes, you want to do most of your watering very early in the morning. Not too much to where the heat of the day, where the leaves are wet and they'll burn, especially here in Texas. You got to really watch that. You have to do it very early in the morning. And um, in the night, you can start happening because it's damp, and then the leaves will get damp as well. So very early in the morning, the good drenching is the best.
Is it wise to overhead water them or just hit the roots, under the canopy?
Usually under the canopy, the roots. The plant will be fine on its own. Once in a while, if you know that it's not, you're way ahead of dark, you can do that. You can spray to wash things off. I do that quite a bit because it gets insects off. Sometimes you don't even have to use insecticidal soaps or neem oil or anything else to get the insects off. You can just spray them off, and they don't like to be wet either because they can't fly, and they need to fly before dark. So
Right.
that's the best time.
And we on our Growing to Give farm in British Columbia during the pandemic, there was a lot of wildfires. So there was ash dropping on the plants. So
Oh,
even though we used the crop circle garden, farm and garden irrigators, we actually every so often had to give them a good overhead watering to clean the leaves off because the ash, like the bits of tree bark were like it was
all on
hitting
there.
the plants, and so you could see it. And so even though they loved the smoke, they were bringing in that carbon dioxide and letting go of oxygen. They I don't think they really liked having their leaves covered in an ash. So
They don't, they have to have, the sun has to get into those pores. So you're right. No, that was good. How did they do once you did that, once you
oh
sprayed?
oh, they survived, and they actually, with the crop circle farm systems, they thrived during heat waves of 115 degrees. So they did really,
Wow,
really well. Yeah.
that is remarkable.
So you talked about you can hand water or irrigate using a drip system, or are there other than crop circle gardens and crop circle irrigators, um, is there a lot of maintenance to container gardening?
No, you just have to stay with it. And if you stay with it and into your plants and you start to notice which ones will do what, it's not that, it's less maintenance than stomping around in a huge garden when you don't know what you're doing yet. And it allows you to make some mistakes and quickly replant something else to not make those mistakes.
That's a good tip. You can replant if the plant doesn't take and it dies. Do you want to be proactive and have a couple of plants in reserve
Yes,
early
you
in the
can either do
season?
that. Yes, you can either do that by sowing your own seeds and keeping them in window sills, or having the seedlings and to take care of them wherever you're going to, if it's not going to be in the pot, or a separate pot where you can just make sure that you get the root system and dig them out and place them in, replant them. Excuse me.
And replanting, do you want to repot during the season to a larger
During a
container? Can you
Depending on the plants, how they're doing. If you see some that are just spent, then go ahead and start that again. I do that with the tomatoes because we can have tomatoes here until November, this year, December, because we didn't get, any freezes. So Um, but you can do that if you see a tomato that is just kind of dying out, a tomato plant, and you plant that soon, then you can have tomatoes all the way, like I say, through December. But you have to watch your plants to know what needs to be replanted and when. And you'll be able to tell by if they're straggly and not producing, if they're just not producing any more fruit.
They probably have outgrown their container then.
Yes.
Do
Oh,
perennials, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You were talking about the ones that have outgrown the plants, the containers.
Yeah.
Some I really haven't had that much of having to replant them in a larger one because they've done so well, and um, you can use um, certain time release fertilizers in the soil, and it keeps those plants pretty good to where you don't have to keep on um, replacing them. That I've never really had to do that with them outgrowing it
Okay.
because you can trim them back, you can cut them back, and they'll start to produce for you again. You don't have to always keep doing that in containers, but you will need to add in new plants once in a while.
Okay. So we've been talking about plants that will, go for a season and produce and then die. Are perennials, which are plants that just keep growing year after year and they get bigger and bigger, do they do well in containers?
They'll do well in containers as well. And those are the ones that you'll have to probably repot if you get a lot of seeded plants to where you want to leave those in there and then start a new group that will do the same thing. But yeah, that those that do well is those would do really well.
Can you can you plant bulbs for, say, tulips and hyacinths? I'm saying that correctly.
Yes. The bulbs are really good if you watch what your frost in your planting zone where when your last frost is going to be. You're going to want to not plant your bulbs in when you know that it's going to be a strong cold front that's coming in. Um, Otherwise, you do a lot of mulching, a lot of leaves and put a lot of mulch on top of it, and they should be okay. But the bulbs would do really well too, and they come out quickly, especially the spring in the spring, depending on the flower.
So you could have some spring flowers coming up and then, early on, say little crocuses or tulips or
Yes.
daffodils, hyacinths, and then you can plant some vegetables on top of that. Once they sort of die back and you cut them down, can you then put some vegetables in there?
You can, with plants, it is so neat to be able to start out with one in a certain season, like pansies like cooler weather. They don't like the heat. And when they're dying back and you know that you're going to need something else that's going to be hardier, you can start doing the vegetables. Um, that just adds if you want if the plant is left in there and there's not much coming off of it, flowers, you can scrub it with your hands and just add that in with your mulch on top of whatever else you're planting. But yes, you can always just change out your flowers depending on what is doing well and what's not.
That's so cool. So there's so much variety when you're container gardening. It's
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I know a lot of folks when you were talking about the COVID period, um, were wanting their food in their backyards. So they were starting out with containers because you have again, you have more control over that, and you have more control over the soil that you're going to use. That lighter soil. It's a way for them to be able to know that they're going to have a food source if they can't get to the store or if something else like this comes about again. And people were getting very interested in all the vitamins that they can intake, and they are beautiful too. Okra has one of the prettiest little flowers on it, but you
Yeah.
can you can also have your flowers with your vegetables as well, and you know that you're going to have a bounty that's going to give you the nutrients, the minerals that your body is needing. So that's a lot. I get a lot of questions about that, about just wanting food to, and especially to show children. It's very important for children to know where their food comes from and how good it is for them and how fun it is to give them life, to take care of them and to be their caretakers. It's fun.
There are so many questions we can be asking. I'm going to ask a couple more and then we'll open it up to the audience to find out who has questions. And if they don't, I have a lot more. And we can keep going. Can we bring containers inside and overwinter plants? And which ones do best?
Yes, you can bring them in. They'll need a window that has a lot of sun. That's the most important thing if you're bringing vegetables in. If not, if you're bringing flowers in, they'll have to have the full sun. They at least need 5 to 6 hours. Flowers do, and some in our area need more, but vegetables need that 6 to 8 hours. You can bring them in, but you need to watch the humidity in your house because a lot of folks will have the heaters on that will dry out a plant. Some plants like it cooler. I don't know if you can see, I have an old poinsettia behind me, and they like the cooler nights. So if you have the heater on, they won't do well. They need the cooler nights and then the warmer afternoons. So this one's an old one that I have behind me. She's like 3 or 4 years old. Anyway, but that's a good question. So people can bring that in, and if you have a little area that you have a corner that you can put them in, um, that's a good way to have them all year long. Add oxygen into your environment, but you need to watch the humidity and the lighting.
Okay, great. Now, Avery, do we have any questions? Do we want to people put their hands up on the Zoom? I'm sure you're following the live. I can't see it, so I don't know who's there. What do we got? Avery.
Nothing so far.
Right.
Do we have any questions from our audience here on Zoom?
Not so far.
Okay. All right. I'll keep going.
I'll let you know.
What?
I said I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you grow fruit trees in a container?
You can, especially the smaller dwarf ones like lemons and limes. Again, they need a lot of light and they need to be in that warm atmosphere. But most of the time, if you're going to start out a fruit tree, you can start them indoors in the wintertime and then take them out in the spring. So a lot of folks will do that because they want them to go ahead and start really booming when they take them out. But yes, those are good. Um, all your tropical trees, your ficus and um your palms, they have to stay out of the winter, but you can bring those in containers in the winter time and take them back out. They love containers because they like the water. They don't like to not have the water. So if you're in an arid part of the country, containers would be really good for your palms and your ficus trees and for those ornamental trees. They can't be out in the wintertime anyway. But fig trees, you could start those in the winter and then of course take them out, but you have to plant them in the ground. They do better with spreading out. They like more of a sprawling surface.
We have an audience question from Tracy. Do you have any experience growing food from food scraps in containers? I guess you know how you see on Facebook all the little reels and videos of people putting the bottom part of their celery and or their avocado or there's all kinds of little reels like that. Have you had any?
It is.
Yeah.
I've had one that I did with avocado that busted. And I put it in, I used to have this little aquarium, not an aquarium, but a fish bowl. And it had already the rocks down at the bottom where it was just had the water there. And I set the avocado there and it busted out and started sprouting. I mean, just coming up as the little tree. So I have it planted in a container right now, but it came out of a little fishbowl because it liked being on top of what was always wet, but not soaking wet. But that's the only one that I have but I'm glad she asked that because I want to start doing that more. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's do that.
will we find that we can sprout, our table scraps, or or are we going to
Potatoes.
find that some things have that terminator seed or whatever they call it, that it won't grow a new plant from a scrap or a seed from that plant?
Sometime because I haven't had luck in the past with it with oranges and lemons because you have all those seeds and I've tried that myself and haven't had any luck with that. But you know what? That's a good thing to look into because I think people will. That's a real good thing. Then they won't have to go buy seeds and they have their own. And yes, that's a good question, Tracy.
So
I'll
your
I'll I'll
your
start to do that.
avocado, sorry, your avocado tree it's starting to grow as a tree. Will you put it outside or do you leave it inside in your container and does it grow big?
At first. I started this in the winter, and when I saw it sticking out of the avocado like that, I just put the seed in there and put some compost around it, and she's starting to grow into a little tree. So we'll see what she does. There you are. We'll see what she does.
Oh, that'll be fun. You'll
And
have to keep us posted.
I will. I'll let you see how she progresses.
Okay. And Tracy, you have your hand up. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank you, Lisa, for your response. That's encouraging. And I just wanted to mention that I've read that up to 40% of all food produced goes uneaten and 95% of food waste ends up in landfill. So recently I've become interested in trying planting food scraps. So I think I will give it a go.
That's good. And maybe Siobhan, composting is great. When Tracy was talking about the table scraps, I agree. A lot of people waste, and I have a compost pile, so we can discuss that one day too, about how important that is, and there won't be any waste, and it's just so healthy to add to all your plants, including your containerized plants too.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how few communities have composting
No.
programs available. There's so much that's just going in the garbage that could be used, and I have heard of a few, but I also have lived in different neighborhoods where people are like, no, no composting here. There's rats. They're gonna, it's gonna bring the rats in. Those types of things. How do we?
If you have
I
cats,
know we're getting off
there
topic,
won't
but
be
how do
rats.
we change that mindset?
Um, the children. That's what we're working on is trying to get the children involved to know that what they're eating, that they are what they eats, and it's very very important that they start learning from the very beginning of how it's all done. Um, Composting is important as well, and the children like bringing their parents coffee grounds and eggshells and the things that make a good compost and putting it in the garbage can and watching it cook, and they enjoy the process and being able to put it in their little hands and put it around the plant and see how much the plant draws from it. And it's the children. That's where we begin.
Oh, I was a child once and I grew up on a farm, so I learned a lot about growing food and, just hanging out in the garden with my mom in the vegetable garden and watching things grow and then getting to enjoy them either fresh out of the garden or frozen. I know that we had these big coolers or freezers, in the basement. We had an old cellar, with the wood, not the wood floors. They were like earthen floors, right?
Right, right.
But she had some really big freezers there, and it was to preserve the food. So like I remember fresh green beans like flash frozen, I guess, and going down into the cellar where the trolls live to go and get a bag of beans for dinner or something like that. And it was all from the garden. I don't remember her actually ever buying anything, maybe some canned vegetables, but I don't remember, her buying a lot of vegetables in the winter because they were frozen,
Yeah,
from the
our
garden.
grandparents did. Our grandparents didn't either, and they didn't have the health issues that we have today, with so much additives in our foods, and um, we're missing a big part of that. And it's delicious. The kids love making things out of the vegetables. Um, they like making dishes and adding things to their recipes, and maybe one day we can even discuss canning, because you're right, if it comes off of that plant and you can start canning and preserving, they like that as well. The whole process is a scientific experiment to them.
Oh, that's so cool. So they're learning about sustainability, which is something our parents and grandparents, depending on how old we were, or great grandparents, they did all the time. They were growing their food all the time. What are some of the best practices, like maybe two or three things for organic container gardening, as opposed to getting soil that has chemicals in it, or fertilizers that have chemicals or pesticides already in there? I guess I don't
I
know.
would say
I'm not
I,
much of a container gardener.
I would say make your own soil. I have in the little article that you can share with folks, I have a little recipe in there. It's easy. Um, there's not any chemicals in it. Try using, when Tracy was just asking that question, try using compost that you make at home. And it's easy to do it for as a fertilizer. Leaves make great composting because they're already from the soil in your area. But if you add that in and make sure that that's crunched up, but composting your soil is very important, and your water too, just to make sure that you're not using water with a lot of additives in it as well. But sometimes that's expensive when you're going to that to get the pure water and not having something with chlorine in it. So,
Yeah,
but that's the basic right
you
there.
never know. Some irrigation ditches on farms and community gardens we've been involved in, you can see the gas on the film of gas on the water that's coming in, say from the irrigation ditches or the creeks, and sometimes you can
Oh
smell
no.
it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And when you do container gardening, you have control over all of that. You have control over what you're going to put in your body
Okay.
by what you put in the soil.
So what about pesticides? We touched on the little critters that can munch away at your leaves. What's a natural way to get rid of some of them?
My favorite is insecticidal soap, and that's usually made out of orange peels, lemon peels, neem oil is mixed in there as well. And you mix it with water and you spray the plant. I usually get, if it's the larger leaves, this is on a mature plant. I usually get either a little soft rag and go on top and the bottom of a leaf, because on the bottom of the leaf is where you'll find your insects because they're hiding. So that way you can take it off and just, quickly go over that. Bugs don't like that. And it's safe. It's safe for the pets that you have around, for children that you have around. It's that's in my opinion. I've listed some in the article as well that you can use to keep them away. But even your pets can keep them away. If you have rabbits, your dogs will chase and if you have rats, the cats will chase the rats away. So there's all kinds of natural ways.
Do large hogs chase anything away? Because Lisa, I know you have a very large pig.
He's huge.
What's his name?
He He's huge. His name is Gunner. He's 600 pounds, and I don't keep anything green around him because he eats everything though. No, he won't chase anything away like that.
I know. I wish so. Next time, hopefully, we'll be able to have you, outside showing us different things. That would be really fun. So I know you and Avery will figure that out. I think that's all we have time for questions today, and I want to thank the audience and Tracy
Yeah,
for
thank
your participation. And there is a special treat for those who've joined us today. Lisa brought a 2-page handout to share with you, and you can find it in the link. You can find its link in the comments section. There it is. Is that right? Is that right, Avery? It's in the chat.
Yep.
Perfect. So it's a document that everybody can connect to and read about container gardening tips.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I just want to give you a minute or two to share any other valuable insights that you think people need to know about container gardening.
First off, don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to fail. That it's not you. Could have been the plant, could have been the weather, it could have been the water you used. Keep trying, just keep trying and have fun with it, and enjoy the process of seeing something that you planted come to life and give you life back. Have a good time with it and relax.
That's right. Just get your hands dirty, have fun, get the
That's
kids
right.
involved,
Mhm.
and let the plants do their thing, you know?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. We actually have a picture right here of a tomato volcano. This is available to community gardens. This is a community garden sized tomato volcano. And that specialized patented system is amazing. The tomatoes love it. There's 5 tomatoes growing in that unit right now. And they'll
Wow.
eventually spill up over the top and explode out the center column like lava out of a volcano. And that is something that it's a system by newleaftechnologies.com that is available only through Growing to Give to our community garden partners around the world. And these ones are growing, and they're you won't be able to see the metal cage in a month or two. So the tomatoes are growing, and they'll grow and grow and grow and grow, and they'll produce tons and tons of, these are cherry tomatoes. So that is
Oh.
one of the things that Growing to Give does to help strengthen community gardens across America, Africa, and the Caribbean. So thank you, Lisa, for sharing your expertise with us today, and your insights have been invaluable. I just want to express my heartfelt gratitude to you. I
You're very
always enjoy
welcome.
talking with you and sharing.
Always.
You are such a caring person, and Texas all the way. We love it.
Texas, Texas all the way. Woohoo! Yes. Yeah.
So Avery has put up the social handles as for follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn, and stay up to date on our next webinar episode. We'll be doing, I believe, once a month. We're going to be doing something on sustainable agriculture, gardening, living, nutrition, maybe some cooking demos down the road. And if you do have a topic idea, we'd love to learn about it. And if you have feedback for us, we're always open to learning how to improve our webinars. And you can connect with us through our direct message on any of our social handles. Before we sign off, I'd like to remind you that a recording of today's webcast will be available for viewing shortly. It will also be uploaded to our YouTube channel, which you will find at the bottom of our website, growingtogive.org. And make sure to share your thoughts and to share the recording on your personal pages, and use a dedicated hashtag. Avery wants me to remember, hashtag growing to give. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. Lisa, we love you. We thank you for being our first guest for our first episode of our webcast series on sustainable living in agriculture. And together, we can create and cultivate a greener, more sustainable future. So until next time, everyone, happy gardening. And post your pictures and tag Growing to Give so we can see them.